Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Teaching Tactics Podcast. I'm Chris Bean, and I'm joined by Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we're going to talk about burnout, how to prevent burnout, what is burnout, and how to hopefully prevent your teaching staff and also your students from being burnt out on your material.
I love burnouts in my car.
Burnouts in the car is not the topic for today.
Oh, what is burnout?
So preventing burnout in both your students and instructors is really the key to maintaining an effective and efficient classes. This can easily be managed by your class schedule, also your school's atmosphere or ecosystem. Burnout happens when your students are pushing themselves too hard, or they're coming to class too frequently. Or perhaps they're going for too long without a break. They're hitting it every single day, or every class that you offer, your students are showing up to. Burnout can cause your students to lose interest in the martial arts, lose their motivation, or even lead to injuries because of overtraining. And so some things to look for when you're trying to identify burnout would be some of these small things that can lead to burnout, right? So if you suspect that burnout may be at play, look at your motivation. How motivated are your students? And maybe this is a snapshot, or maybe of your whole student body. Maybe you do this per class, per belt, however you want to look at this. But think about and kind of analyze your students' motivation levels, and then you can kind of backtrack and see if maybe burnout is the cause for that. If you have increased injuries, like if your students are having injuries at all, really would be kind of cause for concern. But especially if they are increasing, like if the number of injuries that your students are sustaining is increasing, again, extra cause for concern. Anytime a student gets injured, really you need to figure out what happened, why that happened, prevent that from happening in the future. And then again, if that's happening frequently, or if it's happening to, let's say, green belt, for example, frequently, then maybe look and see what's going on, dissect that situation, figure out, is burnout the cause? Is it poor teaching, or is this drill too challenging for them, or whatever the situation is. But just check into that, right? Anytime a student gets injured is bad, but especially if it's happening frequently, burnout very well could be the cause, or at least one of the causes for that. If you have students that are quitting, like let's say they get to brown belt and your dropout percentage for brown belt is higher than all of the belts below that put together, okay, that could be something to check on. And again, burnout is kind of could be an underlying issue, meaning there could be lots of different things that are attributing to the injuries, or to the loss of motivation, or to the students quitting. But burnout would be kind of like the underlying thing. Like, it's there, but on top of this and that and this other thing, that's where, the injuries happen. That's where the lack of motivation is coming from, or that's where the high quit rate is coming from, or stemmed from. So just be mindful of some of those things. Now, what are some things you can do about it? Well, being able to properly identify that burnout is happening. Realize that very likely in your school, somebody, whether it be your teaching staff, your students, the office personnel, somebody in your school is very likely burnt out on martial arts, or on your classes, or they're getting so much information, maybe they feel overwhelmed, or whatever it is. Burnout is happening. And if it isn't happening yet, good job. The potential for it to happen in the future obviously is there. So understanding, what are some things you can do about it is going to be important. And again, biggest thing is properly identify that burnout is happening, right? And so the first step, you need to come up with a plan of action to help to rectify, to solve this burnout situation. Of course, as with anything, there's a few ways you can go about this. I'll give you 3 or 4 of them, and they may suit your needs perfectly. They may not suit your needs at all. Totally understand. Here are some options, okay? Have a remotivation meeting. What does that mean? Well, you sit down with the student or maybe you do this systematically over a length of time. If you have a number of students that are burnt out or lack motivation, you have a remotivation meeting. In that interview or in that meeting, you sit down, you talk to John. Hey, listen, John, what's going on? I noticed, when you started, you were hyped, you were energized, you're ready to train, to come to class. Now, your attendance is falling off a little bit. As you're in class, you're kind of, you're really just kind of going through the motions. And so I just want to kind of get to the bottom and say, hey, what's going on? Get some feedback from them. Maybe you don't know, per se what's going on in their life. Maybe they're getting, bad grades in school. Mom and dad aren't doing so, whatever it is, who knows, but sit down with them, have an opportunity to talk to them. And then depending on the situation, perhaps come up with a plan. What are some things you can do? Help to remotivate them, give them a goal to shoot for, give them some milestones to hit, along the way to reach that goal. Now, of course, if burnout is the cause for this, you have to be careful how you kind of construct this, because you don't want to cause more burnout by giving them a goal to shoot for that's going to have them practice or do more things. So that's something you kind of have to tread lightly and really get to the root cause of, what's going on, and just having that conversation with them has that extra connection. We talk about connections all the time. We talk about the students being, the reason you show up and do stuff. Well, talk to your student, find out what is going on. What, is there something perhaps that you could be doing better? Find out, listen, accept the feedback, maybe offer some options moving forward for the student. But having that, again, I call it a remotivation meeting, call it whatever you want, but have a time to sit down and talk to them and figure out, what's going on. What are some things that you maybe could do better or differently to help that situation? Obviously, we've talked about this before. Send out good job cards. Good job cards are a great way to motivate your students. Let them know that, hey, you showed up to class and your front kick was awesome. Good job. Or you showed up to class, your uniform looked better than anybody else's uniform in there. That was amazing. I wish more people, whatever it is, you show up to class and you really gave it your all on that workout that we did in class. I know it was tough, but you stuck it out. Good job. Whatever it is, it's as small as that is, a handwritten message. You like to say it was a handcrafted.
Personal touch.
Yeah, handcrafted personal touch. Right, you take the time to physically get a pen and a note card. You write their name on it, and you're on the other side or on the front somewhere. You tell them what they did, how it affected. How did they do a good job? Put a stamp on it. Send it in the snail mail. Not digital at all. Hand done, hand delivered snail mail. Old fashioned, right? That'll be something they can put up on their refrigerator. Huge. That will go far distance into motivating your students because you took your time to make that. You sat down, you handcrafted that, sent it out to them. Okay, that's a big deal, right? That's a huge way to motivate your students. In some cases, and these may be, again, you have to kind of play with the situation, but in some cases you can suggest a week off. Not that you're reprimanding them. You did too much. You got to stop. Go home for a week. Don't come to class. Again, and obviously you want those students to continue to come back and to continue to trade. But maybe if the situation is there, you suggest, hey, you know what? You've been hitting it real hard. You've been working real good. I don't want you to overdo it. Take 2 days off. You take Monday and Tuesday off, come back on Wednesday, and then you can go back and over that time, don't think about it. Don't do it. Maybe it's the weekend. Okay, it's the weekend. Don't train, don't think about it, don't do anything, come back refreshed, renewed, ready to hit it hard again. And maybe it's the weekend, you talk about it. Maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's a whole week. You of course have to kind of play with that situation. Maybe you offer, hey, you know what? Take this whole week off. Let's make a one-on-one lesson on Friday. Come in, we'll do a one-on-one lesson. We'll get you caught up for this week, but that'll just give you time to be refreshed. Over that week, don't train, don't think, just take it easy, and then come back. We'll do our one-on-one lesson. We'll touch base, make sure you have that personal touch in there. Then they can come back and do normal training. That might be enough. That might be enough to kind of prevent or to draw back on that burnout that very, very well might be taking place for that student. Again, these are just a few quick solutions, a few quick ways to kind of navigate this situation. Your school very likely is different. You very likely will have different tastes or touches or versions of what to do in this situation. Just use this as an idea, kind of like a game plan. It's a couple ideas to pull from. Think about for your school, what can you do to help your students if they're feeling demotivated, if they maybe are overtraining, if they are getting burnt out? What can you do to help them?
Now that we've discussed some ways to deal with burnout once it's happened, let's kind of take a step back and look at preventing burnout from happening in the first place. I think that preventing this from being a problem to start with is going to be the best solution to help this, obviously go away. Because if you can stop it from even happening, we won't have to implement those certain ways in how to deal with it. So as we had talked about earlier, we want to do everything that we can to prevent this burnout to begin with, stop it from being a problem, and so it's not even a thing that happens. Of course, as we already discussed, it will happen and might already be happening to you, so it's important to have ways to deal with it. But again, we want to be able to stop it before it happens in the first place. And now I think this is where having a good class schedule will come in handy. As you are making your class schedule, or thinking about your class schedule, for your school, again, it might be different, but kind of take into account, we, in our opinion, usually want to keep the students limited to 2 classes per week. So 2 times they come in and train throughout the week. With the occasional, one-on-one lesson or private lesson, they can come to and get extra practice, or if they miss something, they can come in and do those extra lessons. But usually 2 classes per week with maybe an extra one-on-one lesson. I think this is a major key to preventing that burnout in the school. If you open or offer like an open mat type time, or offer a free rolling time, perhaps limit this time to once per week for your students, and limit the time that they can be there on the mat actually rolling. So rather than being open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and you can be there all day long, that's a long day of training, especially if you're working the whole time. And I can imagine after you're there that whole day, you don't want to come back maybe for a while, and that could easily burn you out. So if you have that open mat time, limit the day itself to maybe once per week, and then limit the time that they are there out on the mat actually training, again with the intention of not stopping them from training, but stopping them from overtraining or getting too much and letting themselves burn out, because it may seem like a great thing to have so many days to practice, so much time to practice, but as you know with anything, if you do a whole bunch of it, you're going to get sick of it, and you're not going to want to keep training or keep doing that thing, whatever it is. So limiting and kind of putting a cap on how many times they can come, how long they're here, when they can come, things like that is going to be a key to helping prevent some of that burnout. Now, alternatively, you can offer this as an added benefit to your senior students. So they've already been through the program for a long time. They know how classes work. They know how to train. They know how to practice. They've been interacting with you in the martial arts in your school for a very long time, so they know how everything works. So having that open mat time, or having multiple class times that aren't available they're not available to you until you're farther along in the program, could also be a good way to help prevent that burnout, because they're already accustomed to your school and training and the way you run things. So it might be less likely that they're going to overdo it or burn themselves out by being so involved in the program. So it might be a fine line you might have to play around with and try different things here and there, but we're not saying you can't allow them to come to more than 2 classes per week. We're not saying you can't let them have lots of open mat time or lots of one-on-one lessons as well, but trying to limit those things and monitor how often your students are coming and training, especially toward the beginning and a little bit toward a little bit later after the beginning there. The whole idea, again, is to prevent that burnout. Don't let them come too much and do too much and then get sick of what you're doing. But maybe later, after they're accustomed to everything, kind of opening up that availability to let them do it if they want to. Because at the same time, they'll be able to limit themselves and they'll be able to say, okay, I've been doing this too much and you take a step back for right now. Whether that be I was coming 4 times a week, I'm going to go back to 2 times a week, or even 2 times is too much. I'm going to take a week off and do maybe a private lesson, or, just not come to class for a week, practice on my own for a week, whatever it is. Obviously, the older they get, the more they've been around, they're able to better take a inventory of that and actually do that kind of limiting themselves. And it's not so much as us forcing them to only do certain things at certain times, but they can kind of decide for themselves. And then if they want to come in and do extra practice, they can. And that just depends on the person then. So at the beginning, we kind of control it ourselves. And then maybe the farther along they get, we can kind of step back a little bit and hope that they've been able to understand and realize their limits for themselves. And they're not able to, or they don't come too much and burn themselves out as they're training. So maybe just limiting those things from the start and then keeping an eye on them as they're training could be a good way to help us prevent some of that burnout.
Another great way to, think about or to try to decrease burnout is having your school closed for major holidays. And I get it, that might be kind of scary to think about. If you don't have your doors open, that's an opportunity for your students to forget, to fall out of the habit of coming to class. But this, I really believe we do this. We close for all the major holidays. For Christmas break, which 2 weeks off. Thanksgiving, we close Wednesday, Thursday. The whole rest of the week. Labor Day, we have 2 days closed for that. I mean, for us, we do Mondays and Wednesdays are one set of classes, and then Tuesday, Thursdays are another set. And so if we close on a Monday, if there's a holiday that falls on a Monday, we also close on a Tuesday, just to make it consistent, equal for everybody. That way nobody is getting extra classes somehow. So Memorial Day, Labor Day, Christmas is the whole 2 weeks. We're out. What are some other days? Halloween, depending on where that falls, that's, if it's on I think this year happens to be on Tuesday, so we're out on Monday and Tuesday. So again, I don't know if it's exactly true for this, but basically anytime that a school is closed for a holiday, we're also closed. Again, if it's a Monday, we're also out for that Tuesday, just so it's consistent, because we don't want the Tuesday people, because it seems like a lot of holidays anyways fall on a Monday. And so if you happen to be a Tuesday person, you will get more classes than the Monday person just because of those holidays. So to make it consistent, congruent for everybody, we close on both those days. And I think it works out to be, over the course of a whole year, added all together, is about 3 weeks. For maybe it's a month altogether through the entire year spread out. And really 2 weeks of that are, right at the end for Christmas and New Year's. Oh, also we do the whole week for 4th of July. We do a whole week for spring break. So I guess it's about 4 or so weeks through, over the course of a year. And over that time, that gives our students, our staff, everybody, an opportunity to refresh. Now, again, it might be scary to think about that, or if you don't already have something like that, to set that up or to implement that. Understood. Now, one thing that you can do, again, because we're talking about burnout specifically, so this is kind of a double-edged sword here, but one thing you can do is perhaps give your students some practice cards over that time. We talked about practice cards a ways ago. Or if you want to think about it, maybe a homework assignment to do over that time, to help to do something over that time. If you want to perhaps do like a virtual tournament over that time, okay. I know, from time to time we've done scavenger hunts, virtual scavenger hunts. Those are great. I think we did a virtual bingo, again, just so that we have those interactions, those touches with our students. But for all intents and purposes, we're closed during that time. And that is a great time to have, those kind of preset, pre-planned vacations built into your calendar. And again, this is something that if you don't already have this, I get it. It could be scary to set up. Eventually, if you do this, it's a normal thing. And your students, your clients will come to understand, okay, it's a normal thing. Okay, we're closed. There's no school for Memorial Day. Okay, well, there's also no karate for Memorial Day. Let's go out and do something as a family. Gives them that time. Gives you that time. Maybe there's extra things you need to set up, or maybe you just take that time for yourself and have a small little vacation. Maybe it ends up being a 4-day weekend. Great, good. What can you do with your family for that? Again, all this with the intention of helping to prevent burnout, overtraining, overuse of, basically of the students, getting too much time, right? You want to kind of separate that out, give them time away, almost like they miss it. Man, I'm itching to go back and do some more. Great, good, right? That'll pump their motivation up a little bit, as opposed to being there every single day, doing it every single time, over and over and over again. Having those built-in breaks, those built-in vacations can be beneficial, can be helpful. And so maybe if you don't have something like this, start with the majors. Thanksgiving, okay, hey, take that second half of the week off. Christmas, okay, we're going to do, however many days it is for you. New Year's, okay. 4th of July, start with some of the major ones and then see how that goes. See how your clients do. See how your staff does. And then kind of, depending on how much you want to do, link in, do what the school does. Okay, school is closed on this Monday for President's Day. Okay, we're gonna have President's Day off. And depending on how you wanted to do it, if it's like a President's Day type of thing, maybe have a day camp. Again, this is a double-edged sword, because right now we're talking about burnout. We don't do that every time, but from time to time we have day camps on those days. We're closed. Don't have regular classes, but particularly the kids have kind of need somewhere to go, and the parents, perhaps they still go to work. You can offer that day camp for them. They're here. They're not necessarily doing karate per se. You're playing games. You have that interaction time. Maybe it's a half day thing. You take that for yourself. Do what you want with that. But I think that having like Master Kent said, 2 days a week is key. And then on top of that, having some vacation time built in, and not just for your clients, but for the staff, right? Have that time for them to, okay, all right, let's rewind, let's reset. Okay, now I'm ready to go back and hit it and go to the next break, or, whatever it is for them. I think that could be beneficial. Again, if you don't have something like that, start with the major holidays. Go from there, see how that goes, play it safe. Talk it through with your staff, get some feedback, maybe from some of your clients, and see how it goes, and then go from there. It's your school, you do what you want, but that's what we do. And it's nice to have some of those pre-planned breaks. I'm sure you would agree on that. And as much as I love being here, it's sometimes nice to be refreshed, renewed when I come back.
Yeah, in the best way possible. As a staff member, I do kind of look forward to those breaks. I look forward to those times where I don't have to come in and teach the class. And I say have to, because as much as I enjoy martial arts and love doing martial arts, at the end of the day, this is a job. And as any other job, you do it for a long time, you're going to get burnt out, and you're going to hate it, and you're going to start to resent what you're doing. So having something I love that I have to do every single day, it's just inevitable that there's going to be some days I'm going to not like what I'm doing. There's going to be some days where I want a break, or some days where being here for the 67th day in a row is not good for me objectively, whether or not I love the martial arts or not. So I personally do look forward to those times where I say, okay, there's 2 days I'm not going to have to be here. I can think about martial arts, or I can practice a little bit, but not because I have to, because I might want to. And so having that balance between that necessity to be here for your job or that desire to be here because you love martial arts, kind of having that break for the holidays or the random day off here or the spring break or the summer break for 4th of July, it's nice to look forward to, and it's nice to have that kind of, that chance to step back. And like Mr. Bean said, you can kind of be like, okay, I took off for a week, but man, it's been 4 days and I kind of really want to do some karate. I kind of can't wait to get back to karate. It's a great remotivation tool. You taking a step back and really remembering why you love it and how much you love it, and then not doing it for a while, it's going to make it so much better when you get back in there and start training it again. And not only is that good for your students, but as we've been talking about, it's also good for you too, as a staff member and instructor, to take a second, take a little break, and then come back at with renewed energy and a renewed focus. So I think it's definitely a good tool to help prevent some of that burnout, not only in the students, but also, and I think maybe even more importantly, for your staff as well.
Again, if you wanted to kind of, do this lightly, again, you have this time off. Okay, we're going to have this, we're going to take this week off because it's Christmas or it's 4th of July or something. Here's this cool thing that we're going to do over this week. We're going to have a virtual tournament. Okay, we're going to have a 4th of July scavenger hunt. We're going to do, I'll send out something new. We're going to do a practice card, give you an opportunity to practice this. Okay, here's this karate homework, whatever it is. If you want to just try this and do this, we've I think almost always, I can't remember a time that we haven't had this kind of schedule where we have the holidays off. And relatively recently, we implemented the practice cards, which I feel like, maybe objectively, I feel like are beneficial. And I feel as if the students are doing them, and particularly the ones that are doing them, we can see there's benefit from that. Objectively, I came up with that idea, I implemented it, I did lots of work to get it to work in order to happen. But it is kind of a good feeling while we're closed for 4th of July, Christmas break, or whatever it is, and I get those emails that say, hey, so-and-so did their practice card. Like I almost chuckle. I'm like, ha ha ha! My evil plan is working. It just it's just one of those things. It's kind of nice. It's rewarding to see or to have that feedback from my students to say, hey, listen, even though I'm not there, I'm still going to put a little bit of work in. I'm going to do this thing because I like it enough. I care about it enough. I want to achieve this goal, so I'm going to put this work in. And so, while we have done this for ages, the entire time that I've trained, we've had this preset, kind of schedule where we're closed for all the major holidays. Now having that and then getting that feedback, before we would say, oh man, I know my students aren't practicing or very likely aren't practicing. Now I get to say, hey, so-and-so practice, so-and-so practice. And then when we come back, say, hey, listen, good job practicing over that week off. High five, boom. Whatever it is. For me, and this is very likely because I set that system up, but it is nice to have that feedback from my students to say, hey, listen, I'm still going to do a little bit of work over break. I like that, for whatever that's worth. But all that to say is having that built-in time for vacations, for that separation time, I think is another huge step to help preventing burnout. Your school's culture, the ecosystem that you have and we're going to do a whole episode on ecosystem coming up, the culture of your school. So we'll dive more into that later. But your school's culture can really be an important aspect to look at if burnout is happening, or as a way to prevent or control burnout from happening. The atmosphere of your school could be encouraging your students to come to more classes. Maybe they feel like they're behind. Maybe the way that you're teaching classes feel like that, if they came to more, they would get more, and they came to this one, they would get even more. And so, in talking about burnout, that would be something to look at, another aspect to kind of think about. How is your school set up? Do you offer a school that you train 2 or 3 days per week, and then you also have an open mat time, and then do you have instructors there for that open mat time, and so you're giving instruction during that time, and your students might feel like they would be missing out if they're not there for that. So they feel like they have to go to that, and then there's this other class. Okay, I have to do that one too because I don't want to miss out on something. Which is great that you built that kind of necessity, that kind of build up to learning new information. Kudos to you, good job. But just make sure that you're not warping or expanding that to be burnout. And so if burnout is happening, think about culturally, your school's atmosphere, the ecosystem of your school. Is that contributing to burnout? And if so, what are some things you could do to alleviate that? How can you critique that and change that, morph that into something that sets up for your students to come to class when they're supposed to, but not so much so that they would be missing out if they weren't there every single day of the week. At any time that the studio is open, they feel like they have to be there to partake and to learn and gain extra information. One thing could be the goals that you have set up for your students. How outlandish are they? Are they set up in such a way that your students feel like they have to be there every single time your door's open because otherwise they're not going to make it to that goal. They're not going to make it to that milestone. What is the time? And really the time would be for that. That would be the thing to change. Okay, maybe instead of this happening in 3 weeks, okay, maybe we want this to happen in, a month and a half. Right? And that would be enough. Okay, our students can breathe a little bit. Okay, I don't have to be there every single time the doors are open because otherwise I'm going to miss out. I'm not going to make it to that goal. So that would be another aspect to look at. If burnout potentially is happening, if you're concerned about that, think about your school's culture, the ecosystem, the atmosphere of your school. Is that contributing or even causing the burnout to happen? And if so, what can you do to tweak or change that to where that is not necessarily the case? Your school's ecosystem is, attributing to the connections you're making to the overall well-being of the students, but not pushing them so hard that they are burnt out or overtraining or getting injured, perhaps even. So, again, we'll in a few episodes we'll have a whole episode on ecosystem of your school, the atmosphere, the culture. But until that time, just think about how your students feel when they're at your school, and does that feeling lead them to want to be there, feel like they need to be there even more? And if so, what can you do to tweak and modify that to help prevent burnout from happening? Ashkan, do you have any closing thoughts on burnout?
No, sir. I think it's something that's good to keep our finger on the pulse of and realize that it does something that may happen, trying to prevent it before it happens, and not being discouraged by it, because as with everything, it's an up and down sometimes, and sometimes you'll want to be here, sometimes you won't, but don't be discouraged by it, and implement some of the tactics and ways that we've discussed, not only to deal with it once you can identify it, but then try to prevent it from happening in your students, happening in your staff, and then also yourself, because that's going to keep you at peak performance and help you to, really exercise your student first mindset, and that make sure that everyone's training well and training in a healthy way and not overdoing it or being burnt out on your program.
So if you wanted to reach out to us, give us some ideas for some other episodes, or have an opportunity to ask us some questions, we have a question and answer episode coming up very soon. You can post a question on Reddit or Twitter or Facebook. On any of those things, we'll be more than happy to include those into the show. If you have any questions about, different teaching protocols that we use, different cultural base. We talked about that a little bit, how the culture of our school is set up. Any questions? Even if it's a podcasting question, if something, how we set it up, where we come up with the ideas or anything like that, let us know. Ask us the question. We'll be more than happy to include that into that episode. But on any of those socials, you can find us at MA Teaching Tactics. MA, of course, for martial arts. And you can find us on YouTube and anywhere where podcasts are able to be listened to. You can find us there as well for searching for Martial Arts Teaching Tactics or MA Teaching Tactics on those. Until next time, I'm Chris Bean.
And I'm Chris Kent.